In this video, I want to show you how to apply gradient to text in SwiftUI using 6 different ways. SwiftUI has 4 built-in gradient views: linear gradient, angular gradient, elliptical gradient, and radial gradient. I will show you how to apply each of the built-in gradients on text and their customization options. There are also 2 ways to apply the gradient, using the foregroundStyle modifier and also using the mask modifier. So I'm going to show you each one of them step by step. To begin, let's expand the code. I will start with linear gradient. To add a linear gradient to the text, all you need to do here is to add the foregroundStyle modifier and pass the gradient parameter in the parentheses. For linear gradient, you need to specify the gradient colors. Over here, you can add as many colors you want. We have an array consisting of 2 colors. I can put a comma here and add other color like green. You have noticed we have now applied green to the gradient. The next parameter to specify for the gradient is the start point and also the end point. For the start and end points, we have different options. If I put a period here, these are all the options we have. You can set it to the bottom part or choose different locations for the start point. We have bottom trailing, bottom leading, top leading, and the rest. So the options for the end point is the same as that of the start point. So that is one way to apply gradient to text in SwiftUI using the foregroundStyle modifier. You can also use the mask modifier to achieve the same thing. To do that, I'm going to remove the gradient. To apply the gradient to the text with mask, first, I'll paste the gradient view here and remove the text. Since we want to mask the gradient to the text, we don't need to care about the size. So what we need to do here is to add the mask modifier. Once you use the mask modifier, you need to specify the masking view. So the masking view is now the text view. And with that, we have a nice gradient applied to the text. Let's modify the gradient. So we can change both the start point and the end point, and also the colors. So this is another way to apply gradient to text in SwiftUI using the mask modifier. Let's remove the text and continue. Let's remove the linear gradient as well and paste the text here. From now, we are going to stick to one option using the foregroundStyle modifier. The next gradient style we want to apply to the text is angular gradient. This is also known as conic gradient. Angular gradient applies a color function to views based on the center. For the linear gradient, we had both start and end points, but for this, we only have the center parameter. So we can, for example, change it to different locations. So as we change it, we update the gradient. So angular gradient applies the color function as an angle from the center. Aside the angular gradient, we also have radial gradient, which applies the color function as a distance from the center instead of an angle from the center. So with this gradient, we have the start radius and also the end radius. So we can adjust these values in order to create different kind of gradients. The last built-in gradient is elliptical gradient. By default, when we apply elliptical gradient, it draws an ellipse at the center of the view. So you have noticed it applies the gradient at the center in the form of an ellipse. So we can use the center parameter to change the position or adjust the start radius fraction or the end radius fraction. So I have now shown you how to apply gradients to a SwiftUI text using the 4 built-in gradient styles. I also showed you how to apply the gradient as a foreground style or using a mask. Without using the 4 gradient styles, you can also use the mask along with mesh gradient. To do that, I'm going to remove the foregroundStyle modifier. Then over here, I'm going to draw a 3x3 mesh gradient and remove the text. To draw a mesh gradient, these are the parameters we need to specify. That is the size of the mesh gradient, the gradient points, and the color you want to use. If you want to add more colors and points, you can, for example, create a 5x5 mesh gradient instead of a 3x3 gradient. But for illustration purpose, we're going to leave it 3x3. Let's add the mask modifier and specify the masking view as the text. That clips the mesh gradient to the text. So you can go ahead and modify the gradient points or the colors in any form you want. So that is all I have for you in this video. I showed you how to use the standard gradient views in SwiftUI. We covered linear gradient, angular gradient, radial gradient, and elliptical gradient. I showed you how to apply the gradient style as foreground or using the mask modifier. And finally, we used a mesh gradient along with the mask modifier to apply the gradient to text. The gradient points you see here are all animatable. In my next video, I'll show you how to animate the points to create a shimmering effect in SwiftUI.